Hey YouTube, Brian here, back with one of these videos, which I honestly haven't done in a while now, but I do bring good news because yesterday I went to the Vancouver regionals, had about 110 players, so a bit smaller on the regional side, but I was able to get third place at the event, which got me this very beautiful dragon ruler mat, as well as this nice little deck box as a reward. But what I wanted to primarily do with this video is it is a deck profile, but also you can kind of look at it as like a mid-season update from me in terms of like what I'm doing with Maliss and then like the text and ratios that I'm choosing to play. Obviously, you know, as you guys can tell from the thumbnail and the title, I played Maliss with Ignister stuff, of course, and yeah, let's just get right into it. So I'll kind of breeze through the obvious parts first. So of course, we're playing all the names. I did bump Chessie up to 3 just because I wanted to have max consistency, and then Marcher being the strongest extender in the deck, you of course play at 3 as well. Then 2 underground, 1 mirror, and you have the kind of honorary Maliss cards in Gold Tark and Terraforming, and then of course the 1 MTP07. So MTP07 is the only trap I'm playing. This is something that I basically tried out after YCS Providence, where Pack and the others played only MTP07 and sided the GWC06. So after trying it out, I have to say that I do kind of agree with the philosophy, because what I found was that in most game ones, you really don't need GWC06. Like MTP07 will suffice like the vast majority of the time. And I'm not saying that GWC06 never comes up during game one, but it's just a very hard garnet to draw. And you know, since game one is such an important game for Maliss, where you know, it's the only game where your opponent hasn't had a chance to side in all of your silver bullets in Lancia or Chaos Center or Meows yet. And so it's very important for you to win game one, so that as long as you win one of game 2 or game 3, you'll still be able to win the match. And that just kind of reduces the chances of you just getting blown out by an artifact Lancia. So I'm only playing the MTP07. It is the only trap you really need in most cases. And I think, yeah, like keeping the main engine as compact as possible and kind of make it as lean as possible worked out for me during the event, and I have no problems with just playing the 1 MTP07 in the main deck. And then of course for our pseudo engine, we still have our 3 backup and our 1 wizard. Extremely good package to play as a pseudo starter for the deck, and then also a fantastic extender. That makes the engine of the deck roughly, I believe, 20 cards. So the rest of the deck, which is all of the remaining 21 cards, we are using to play hand traps. So first we have probably the most depressing part about this format, which is we have 3 Droll, 3 Perilia, and 3 Fualos. So if you're a budget player, I do apologize for the Mocharmies in this list, but unfortunately the format that we're in now, if you want to play at like a very high competitive level, you kind of do have to be playing a bunch of Charmies, because the ceiling of the decks right now are extremely high, and if uncontested with one of these hand traps, will mean you probably lose on the spot. There's just too many super hard combo decks that you would never be able to play through if you aren't able to at least hinder the board that they're able to set up. So you know, these 6 are like kind of just the most ubiquitous of the format. Like Fualos, obviously very good, but Perilia and Droll are in here mainly for, you know, Mitsurugi, Raziel, so on and so forth. That is probably one of your hardest matchups, because that deck has very few counters, at least compared to Maliss, and its end boards are just as oppressive as Maliss if they fully go off. So, and you might be questioning like you know, why main deck Droll when you're playing 6 Molcharmies? Don't they kind of conflict with each other? Well, the idea is that you just want to maximize your chances of drawing at least one of these, because it's so important to draw at least one of these. If you draw like combinations of any 2 of these, like obviously like, you know, any 2 of the Charmies is fine since you can use 2 Charmies in a turn. But if you draw Droll with a Charmy, then that's still fine, because depending on your hand, you can kind of pick which one you want to use. So if your hand is like pretty weak, like maybe you don't have a starter, then you should go for the Charmies, so that the Charmies can hopefully draw you into a starter. And usually your opponent will give you like 1 or maybe sometimes 2 draws, and end on a half board for whatever their deck is. However, if your hand is already very strong, let's say you had like Dormouse, Backup, March Hare, then you can feel free to just draw them so that it ends their turn, and then you can save your Charmy to act as like a backup discard or something like that. So even if you draw them together, it's still fine. You just want to maximize your chances of seeing at least one of them. And unfortunately, that is kind of just the state of the format right now. So yeah. And then for like more traditional hand traps, obviously we're still playing 3 Ash in order to stop the Charmies. And then we have 1 of each of the good Bystials. I did end up putting, for a while, I did cut the Bystials down to just 1 Magma, 1 Druistorm. But I think like Bystials are just good enough of an extender that like I really do like having the Baldrake as like just another Bystial and as an option to search off Magma. And, like Bystials, especially since Pure Mitsurugi is actually getting pretty popular, and Mitsurugi Fiendsmith is also getting popular. Those variants are hurt particularly bad by Bystials, and so I don't know if I would play more Baldrake honestly, because like it's not great into Mitsurugi Ryziel specifically. It can be like regional dependent. So if you're going to like a regional of your own, your mileage may vary, but I just chose to play 1 of each of these. They served me pretty well throughout the day. Then I had the 3 Imperm and then the 3 Dominus Impulse. So Impulse is absolutely crazy, of course, and big shout outs to Max Wong for letting me borrow these for like an extended period of time. Very appreciated. They were extremely clutch during the tournament. Imperm, I would say, like, is probably the weakest of all of the hand traps, and there's honestly an argument to not even playing Imperm, to play something like maybe like 2 Thrust and a Talents, just to add some board breakers into the main deck. Or you can play like Ghost Spell, although me personally, I don't find Ghost Spell to be impactful enough to play. However, I do play the Impermanence because it's one of your few outs against something like a Detonator. Like if you put your opponent under a Droll or under a Charmy and they go Detonator Pass, Impermanence is one of the ways you can answer the Detonator. And a lot of the times, they aren't sending Eclipse Twins these days because they don't want to give you a target to banish off of your Bystials. So they'll send like a Duo Drive so that there's no Lights or Darks in their graveyard, and then since their Detonator doesn't have a Eclipse Stones under it, you can just Imperm it and then play the rest of your turn. So I do still like Imperm. Obviously it has synergy with the Impulse as well, so that the Impulse then destroys whatever it negates. But yeah, so as you can see, 20 engine, 21 non-engine, pretty dire straits, I'd say, but we do what we gotta do. And let's go ahead and go into the extra deck, because I think the extra deck is probably the part of the deck that actually like has the most like debatable choices. So you guys watching like kind of my Maliss videos from the beginning know that like at some point I kind of went off of Almirage, and I also never believed in Link Spider. And I think that like to an extent, I still don't think Link Spider is technically necessary, but yeah, so we play the 1 Almirage, we play the 2 Lingeribo, and then we play the 1 Link Spider. So the idea is that, as you'll see with the rest of the extra deck, is that like we're trying to cut down on the top end in the extra deck. So I'm not playing as many like Link 4s, and the reason is because like so many of your games, you're going to have to deal with a Charmy, you're going to have to deal with a Lancia, just something that will make you just go with a half board. And when that is the case, like having like a bunch of Link 4 bosses in your extra deck really doesn't do anything. And so the idea is that if most of the time you're going to be playing, very low to the ground, making a half board, then you want to have cards in your extra deck that kind of help like aid those situations. Like Almirage and Link Spider are for like fringe cases, but like when they do come up, they actually are pretty huge. And I think like having these lines available is probably more valuable than having something like, this is kind of a spoiler for later, but having something like Firewall Dragon, which I'll explain in a second. But yeah, we do play a bunch of Link 1s now. Lingarevo, obviously the MVP Link 1, really good. And you definitely do want to play 2 copies, because a lot of the times you're going to be using one to start your turn in order to turn on like a backup secretary or something. But then it's also very nice to have a second one for later in the game, and or to trigger your Wicked after you have already used your first one. Almirage here is not so much to like make the 1.5 card backup combos live. It's more so when you open hands like Underground plus, you know, one of the Charmies. If you go Underground and your opponent imperms your, you know, the Dormouse you summon, for instance, then it's nice to be able to normal the Charmy and convert it into an Almirage, and then make a Splash Mage, and then Splash Mage summon the Dormouse back. Because at that point, you know, there's no way for your Charmy to be live anyway, since you already played Underground, and your opponent is not just going to remove Underground for no reason and play into your Charmy, so you might as well use the Charmy as part of your play. And then Link Spider is in here, of course, to be a nib backup, and he is nice in the sense that like it makes you have to think way less about playing around nib. Like, you don't have to be as careful. You can play a bit more loosely. But yeah, we're just trying to maximize the chances of us playing the game. So I still play the one Haggard. Haggard, I honestly didn't make once during the regional yesterday, I believe. Or no, I did play it once in order to out. There can be only one, just because he's a reptile, and I had to go into SP Low Knight, but I still didn't win that game anyway. Though I didn't kind of make him during my regular games, I think like he is still good to have, because he's an option where if you have like a Nibiru and then you normal summon a name and then impermanent, you do want like kind of like a way to like banish your name and then have them come back without like necessarily having to spend your Little Knight, or something like a Bestial, for instance. So he's like a nice generic to have, especially mid game when like you have a bunch of names engraved and you just like need like any 2 monsters to get your whole engine rolling. So I think Lizard is still worth playing in that regard. And then of course we have Wicked, fantastic for searching out your backup, but also Wicked's effect so that your the monsters that Wicked points to can't be destroyed by card effects is also very relevant. Especially against monsters like Murakumo or against decks like Fire King. So yeah, Wicked and Splash Mage. And then we played the one Low Knight, of course you have to, and then the one Dark. Honestly, there is a justification to cutting the Dark, especially if like you don't end up playing against too many mirrors. I did not go into Dark too much yesterday, and I think like there is an argument to cut him, but he is really important in the mirror if he does come up, because he basically just gives you another wave of pushes. And yeah, I think I do still like including him, at least for now. Then of course we have the 3 queens. I don't think I really need to explain there. Playing a Maliss deck. We have the 1 access code, which is the most common Link 4 that I summoned yesterday. You know, extremely broken. Being able to just clear your opponent's board, go for OTKs, and then also trigger your queens by banishing them. We have the 1 Topologic Bomber, of course, to out Chaos Hunter, but then also he's a pretty good end board piece. And then we have, lastly, the Allied Code Talker at Ignister. Still really good as a end board piece, boss monster, to stop any kind of board breaking tools that your opponent might have. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and as you've probably already noticed, I'm not playing Firewall Dragon. And you know, Firewall is my boy. I do like Firewall. I like bouncing hand traps back to my hand. I think he's very flexible. But the issue that I kind of found was that like he just wasn't really necessary. Like in most hands where you can get to that kind of board, you probably have already won anyway. In the hands in which you were interrupted and you have to set up a half board, I found that basically every single time I would just prefer to make Bomber Dragon instead. And Bomber Dragon would just be like a better end board boss monster than Firewall would be. So Firewall in that case would be like just, you know, basically win more, right? And as I explained before, the idea is that we don't want to play too much top end, because we're rarely getting to these, especially in game states where, you know, we get Charmied or we get Lancia, stuff like that. So we just play what's necessary and what's most impactful, and then the rest of the extra deck is dedicated to making sure that our combo pops off. Like if you're wondering like what kind of board I make now if I don't play the firewall, most of the time it's just white binder with like if I get the full combo off, it'll be white binder with ransom, with cryptor, and then the allied code right here. So at least in my experience, this is pretty much like just as strong as the firewall combo. Obviously, like the firewall end board is you know, one layer stronger because this cryptor will probably be in your graveyard, and then you have a firewall here, so it would just be like an extra additional piece of interruption. But like if you got to this full board, then like it doesn't really matter if you're short like a firewall bounce, because like this is already like probably way too much for your opponent to deal with, since you also have like MTP07 set, and you probably have like a bunch of hand traps in hands, and you drew a bunch of cards. So like this M board, if you're able to get to it, like is not the issue. So as I've explained, like you don't really need firewall, at least in my experience. That's why I decided to cut the firewall. Another M board that I've actually been quite liking making is going something like just Wicked, and then the Bomb Dragon in the main monster zone. And this is like a bit this is like kind of interesting because the Wicked, as you guys know, will prevent the topologic Bomber Dragon from being destroyed by card effects. And the reason this setup I liked more than just putting the Bomber Dragon in the extra monster zone is because when Bomber Dragon is in the extra monster zone, it's a bit harder to kind of put up a board of your own without triggering the Bomber Dragon, since you know, as I've said in previous videos, Bomber Dragon, both of his effects are mandatory, and they will trigger if a monster is summoned to any link zone. So not just his, includes link zones given to you by your you know, by your link monsters. And your opponent can also summon to topologic zone that topologic is pointing to in order to destroy your field if you aren't careful. So having the Wicked here means that you don't give your opponent a zone to just freely trigger Bomber Dragon with, and you can basically very easily control when you want to trigger your Bomber Dragon, because when you have this kind of setup, you only have one zone that triggers your Bomber Dragon, so you can summon to any of the three others without worry. And it also makes it so that you can summon your Hearts of Cryptor here, so that your Hearts of Cryptor can't be destroyed. Can't be negated by your opponent's card effects, and your Wicked is going to like search you additional follow-up, so on and so forth. So this board is just like generally flexible. I don't go for this over the Allied Code Tarka line, but in certain matchups, this might be better, especially if your opponent has like a lot of cards that like destroy your cards, for instance. Otherwise, yeah, like I did not really miss Firewall at all yesterday. There was like one game where he could have been useful, but I think I ended up winning that anyway, so it wasn't really a huge deal. And then let's just go over the side deck really quickly. So of course we have the 3 Meows. Big thanks to James Nguyen again for letting me borrow the Perulias, and then I also picked these Meows off of him. And then we have the 3 Lancia, we have the 3 Nibiru. Basically just additional hate for, you know, the mirror match, and then also for Mitsurugi. Although the main deck is mainly already like designed to beat Mitsurugi, and so this here is more so for like the mirror match, and then also for like, you know, other rogue matchups. So there's that. And then I am playing the 3 Michu, 1 Called By, 1 Talents, and then 1 GWC06. So basically the idea behind this package, as you probably have seen in like Pack or Ryan Yu's deck profile, is that like instead of siding in cards like Solemn Strike, Solemn Judgment, Solemn Warning, whatever, or Thrust for like any of the Thrust traps, we just rather be able to like play, because even just making a half board is like extremely strong. And if you've seen any of my, you know, like replays, anytime I get like, you know, Charmead or Lancia, I will very often just go for Ransom and Ransom plus Mirror and Pass, because Ransom, Mirror, Pass still represents 2 pieces of interruption. You have the Mirror to negate a monster's effect, And then Ransom, when banished by Mirror, can banish your White Rabbit. White Rabbit can set your MTP07, and then MTP07 can banish your Rabbit in order to banish a card your opponent controls. So, you know, you basically give your opponent very minimal draws off of Charmies, or, you know, your opponent goes -1 for the Lancia, and you still have 2 interruptions plus any kind of hand traps you have in your hand. And we play 21 hand traps, so it's very likely that you will have some kind of hand trap. So having the Michus here, just really good to have access to the Ignister cards. That way you can still play under something like Lancia. Of course, called by, you know, don't have to explain it, you're only out against Lancia. The one match I lost yesterday was to Fire King. When they Lancia'd me, I chained called by, they had a second Lancia, and then game 3 they had there can be only one. So, you know, you can only do so much when your opponent has the right cards to beat you. But yeah, tactics obviously super strong when going first. I don't play crossout. I don't really believe in the crossout ratios. I think it's just not worth it. I would basically like only ever side crossout in the Mirror, because you would naturally side in the Lancias anyway. But I just don't think there's like really a point to siding crossout if like I can't just freely call like any crossout target I want. Because obviously when I'm going first, I'm siding out my Fualoses, I'm siding out Perulias, and I'm not siding in Meowls. And so if I can't call any of the Charmies with crossout, I just feel like crossout is just not worth playing. And then of course GWC in the side. Good to have when going first, especially since, you know, Fiendsmith engine is still running around. Obviously having GWC with White Binder set up and answers the Fiendsmith engine extremely well. And also came up yesterday when I played against Chainburn, and I just looped GWC06 like 4 times just to get up to like 11,000 life points. There's the deck. I was pretty happy with how it performed, and I don't think that I would make any changes, at least for now. Obviously, I'm still going to be testing all the way up until Nationals happens. But yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to direct it to the comments below or to our Discord. If you would like, you know, like tips with the deck and you would like practice with it or whatever, you know, we have coaching sessions on our Metafy page where I can go more in depth about like this, the particular choices that I made or like side patterns that I did. I think siding with this deck is actually pretty easy. You could probably figure it out on your own, but you know, if you need someone to kind of help you walk you through it, then you can find me on the Metafy page. Yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see everyone in the next one.